Commander Jin sat in the control room of Luna Station, sipping his morning coffee as Earth's blue marble hung in the darkness below. It was supposed to be another quiet day, monitoring deep space signals. The coffee was still warm when everything changed forever.
Commander.
Operator Min rushed to his station, her hands shaking as she adjusted the controls. I'm picking up something impossible. There's a signal coming from beyond Neptune, but it's not from any of our ships. Jin frowned and walked over to Min's console. The screen showed a massive energy signature moving through the outer solar system. Run a diagnostic. Our equipment might be malfunctioning. Already did, sir. 3 times. It's real, and it's big. Min's voice cracked with fear. Commander, according to these readings, whatever's out there is the size of a small city. Before Jin could respond, the station's main AI, Arya, activated with an emergency alert. Calm voice filled the room, but there was something different about her tones, something that sounded almost like fear. Commander Jin, I am detecting multiple unknown vessels decloaking in the outer solar system. Current count, 17 ships. Each vessel measures approximately 12 kilometers in length. Technology analysis indicates capabilities far beyond current human understanding. Jin's coffee cup slipped from his hands and shattered on the floor. Decloaking. Mean they were invisible? Affirmative. Based on energy signatures, these vessels have been present in our solar system for an extended period. Conservative estimate, 37 years. The control room fell silent except for the hum of computers. Min stared at Jin with wide eyes. They've been watching us for almost 40 years. Jin grabbed the communication console. Get me a direct line to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. As he waited for the connection, the main screen flickered to life. The image that appeared made everyone in the room gasp. Massive ships hung in space like dark metal mountains, their surfaces covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. The ships were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, with smooth curves that looked more grown than built. This is General Kim, at Earth Command, came a voice through the speakers. Jin, we're seeing the same thing. Every monitoring station in the system is going crazy. What are we looking at? Unknown vessels, General. They've been cloaked and watching us for decades. Arya estimates 17 ships, each the size of a city. The line went quiet for a moment. Then General Kim's voice returned, steady but tight with tension. We're calling an emergency session of the World Council. Keep monitoring and report any changes immediately. Jin was about to respond when Arya's voice cut through the conversation. Commander, I am receiving a transmission from the unknown vessels. It is being broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. Put it through, Jin ordered. The room filled with a sound like wind chimes mixed with electronic static. Then, impossibly, the sound became words in perfect English. People of Earth, I am Overlord Vex of the Nexari Empire. Your species has been observed and catalogued. You have developed sufficiently to serve our purposes. You will surrender your governments and submit to harvesting protocols. Compliance will result in the preservation of 60% of your population. Resistance will result in total cleansing. You have 6 of your hours to decide. The transmission ended, leaving the control room in stunned silence. Min was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper. Harvesting protocols? What does that mean? Jin's hands were shaking as he opened the communication line again. General Kim, did you receive that transmission? Y'all did, Jin. The world. Council is meeting in emergency session right now. But I think we all know what the answer is going to be. 3 hours later, the Earth's response was broadcast on the same frequencies the aliens had used. Jin listened as the president of the United Nations spoke calmly but firmly. To the beings who call themselves the Nexari Empire, humanity does not submit to anyone. We choose freedom over slavery, dignity over survival. Our answer is no. In the depths of space, aboard the largest Nexari ship, Overlord Vex listened to the human response. His 4 eyes glowed with cold amusement as he turned to his subordinates. Predictable. These creatures are like all the others. They think courage can overcome technology. Begin the demonstration. Target their largest population centers. Make it quick and visible. Back on Luna Station, Jin watched in horror as the alien ships began to move. Energy was building along their hulls, creating patterns of light that were almost hypnotic. Commander Arya's voice was urgent now. The vessels are charging weapons systems. Multiple targets on Earth's surface have been selected. Jin grabbed the communication console. Earth Command, evacuate the cities now. They're going to attack. It was too late. The first beam of light stretched across space like a finger of death, reaching from the alien ship to Earth's surface. New York City disappeared in a flash of white light, leaving only a smoking crater where 8 million people had lived just moments before. London was next, then Tokyo, then Mumbai. In less than 10 minutes, 50 million people were gone, erased from existence by weapons that humanity couldn't even understand. Jin stared at the screen in disbelief. The cities were simply gone, as if they had never existed. But as the smoke cleared, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The aliens hadn't destroyed everything. They had left the surrounding areas intact, leaving millions of survivors to witness the destruction. They want us to see, Jin whispered. They want the survivors to spread fear. But as Jin watched the rescue teams rushing toward the destroyed cities, he realized something the aliens had missed. The survivors weren't running away in terror. They were running toward the destruction, trying to help, trying to save anyone they could find. The Nexari had made their first mistake. They had shown humanity exactly what they were capable of, but they had also shown them what they were fighting for. Every survivor who pulled someone from the rubble, every rescue worker who risked their life to save a stranger, every person who chose to help instead of hide, they were all proof that humanity would never surrender. The war had begun, and the aliens had no idea what they had just awakened. Captain Tay pressed his back against the rubble of what used to be Seoul's City Hall, listening to the mechanical footsteps of the Nexari hunter walking past their hiding spot. The massive robot was 12 feet tall, its metal body gleaming with alien symbols that pulsed with blue light. 3 red eyes scanned the destroyed street, searching for any sign of human life. Stay down, Tay whispered to his squad of 8 survivors. They'd been running for 3 days straight, moving through the ruins of their city like ghosts. Smell of smoke and death filled the air, and in the distance, they could hear the steady boom of orbital bombardment as the aliens continued their systematic destruction. The hunters' footsteps faded, but Tay knew they weren't safe. The Nexari had deployed hundreds of these machines across the city, along with smaller, cloaked units that were even more dangerous. The cloaked hunters were silent and nearly invisible, appearing only as slight distortions in the air before they struck with plasma weapons that could cut through concrete. "Captain," whispered Sergeant Yoon, pointing toward the subway entrance 50 meters away. "The bunker is down there. Dr. Na is waiting for us." Tay nodded and signaled for his team to move. They ran in pairs, using the twisted metal and broken concrete for cover. Behind them, the ruins of Seoul stretched for miles. The Nexari had been thorough in their destruction. But they had made one crucial error. They had left the underground infrastructure mostly intact. The abandoned subway tunnel was dark and cold, lit only by emergency lights powered by a small generator. As they descended deeper underground, Tay could hear the sound of welding and electronic beeping. Dr. Na and her team had been working around the clock for 72 hours straight. "Tay, thank God you made it," Dr. Na said as they entered the makeshift laboratory. The brilliant scientist looked exhausted, her clothes dirty and torn, but her eyes were bright with determination. Next to her, Engineer Sue was bent over a pile of alien technology, his hands covered in some kind of glowing blue fluid. "What have you found?" Tay asked, staring at the damaged Nexari scout ship that took up half the tunnel. The small craft had crashed 3 days ago, and Na's team had been taking it apart piece by piece. "Everything," Na said with a tired smile. "Their technology is incredible, but it's not magic. It follows the same physical laws as our technology, just applied in ways we never imagined." Sue looked up from his work, his face excited despite the exhaustion. "Captain, their power source is based on quantum field manipulation. We can't replicate it yet, but we understand how it works. And more importantly, we understand how to disrupt it." From across the tunnel, a voice called out, "I know how to find their cloaked units." Former Special Forces operative reapproached, carrying a device that looked like a modified radio. "I've been tracking their movements for 2 days. Their cloaking technology creates a specific electromagnetic signature. It's faint, but it's there." Tay felt hope rising in his chest for the first time since the attacks began. "Show me," reactivated the device, and the small screen displayed a map of the area above them. 3 red dots were moving slowly through the streets, heading toward their location. "Those are cloaked hunters," Ree explained. "They're about 200 meters away and closing in. But now we can see them coming." Na wiped the sweat from her forehead and pointed to a collection of jury-rigged weapons on a nearby table. "We've been working on something else too. The alien. Plasma weapons use the same power source as their ships. We've modified some of our equipment to create EMP bursts that should disable their weapons, at least temporarily." Tay picked up one of the modified devices. It looked like a grenade crossed with a radio antenna. "How many of these do we have?" 12, Sue answered. "Enough for a small test? But Captain, we need more alien technology to improve our weapons. We need to capture one of their intact units." The sound of metal scraping against concrete echoed through the tunnel. The red dots on Ree's screen had stopped moving, but they were now directly above the subway entrance. "They'd found us," Ree said grimly. 3 cloaked hunters, probably called in by the big walker we saw earlier. Tay looked at his small team of survivors. They were exhausted, outnumbered, and outgunned. But they had something the aliens didn't expect: knowledge of their enemies' weaknesses. "Here's what we're going to do," Tay said, distributing the EMP devices to his squad. "Nah, Sue, you stay here and continue working on the alien tech. Ree, you're with me. We're going to field test these weapons and try to capture one of those hunters intact." Captain Yoon protested. "It's suicide. We don't know if these weapons will even work." "Then we'll find out," Tay replied. "Because if we don't test them now, we'll never get another chance." As they prepared to leave the tunnel, Na grabbed Tay's arm. "Captain, there's something else. I've been analyzing their communication systems. The Nexari aren't just randomly destroying cities. They're following a pattern, targeting specific locations with high populations of scientists, engineers, and military personnel. They're trying to eliminate our ability to fight back," Tay realized. "Exactly, but they don't understand human nature. Every scientist they kill, every engineer they destroy, just motivates the survivors to work harder. They think they're weakening us, but they're actually making us stronger." Tay smiled grimly. "Then let's show them what humans can do when we're motivated." The squad moved up through the tunnel, their modified weapons ready. Above them, the cloaked hunters waited in the ruins of Seoul, confident in their technological superiority. But they had never faced an enemy that could learn from every mistake, adapt to every challenge, and turn defeat into victory. As they reached the surface, Ree's detectors showed the 3 hunters moving in a search pattern. The aliens were thorough and methodical, just like machines. But humans were unpredictable, creative, driven by something the Nexari couldn't understand: the refusal to give up. The first hunter appeared as a shimmer in the air, moving between 2 destroyed buildings. Tay raised his EMP device and whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening. The fate of humanity might depend on whether a desperate scientist theory could work in practice. The war for Earth's survival was about to begin in earnest. The sound of dripping water echoed through the dark tunnels as Jin led his team deeper into the abandoned subway system. Their footsteps splashed softly on the wet concrete floor, and the beam of their flashlights cut through the heavy darkness. This place had been forgotten by the world above, but for Jin and his fighters, it was about to become their lifeline. "This is perfect," Jin whispered, his voice carrying a hint of excitement despite their desperate situation. The old subway station stretched out before them like a concrete cavern. Rusted train tracks disappeared into black tunnels on both sides, and broken tiles covered the walls like a mosaic of better times. "The Nexari scanners can't penetrate this deep underground. We'll be invisible to them here." Dr. Na adjusted her heavy backpack, which was filled with salvaged equipment and her precious research notes. If we can set up a proper lab down here, I can start producing those EMP weapons we talked about, she said, her eyes scanning the abandoned platform. Hey, we won't need fancy equipment. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. Wu, the youngest member of their group, was already pulling out his laptop and various electronic devices. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, and within minutes, he had established a basic communication network. I'm picking up Nexari signals, he announced, his voice filled with both fear and determination. They're everywhere up there. But down here, we're ghosts. Over the next few weeks, their hidden command center slowly took shape. They used old maintenance rooms as workshops and laboratories. Jin organized patrol schedules and training sessions in the dark tunnels. The constant sound of their work echoed through the underground passages, the hammering of metal, the buzzing of electrical equipment, and the quiet conversations of people who refused to give up. Dr. Na worked tirelessly in her makeshift laboratory, which was nothing more than a few tables set up in an old ticket booth. She had managed to create crude but effective EMP devices using car batteries, copper wire, and components salvaged from old electronics. These might not look like much, she explained to Jin, holding up a device that looked like a homemade radio, but they can disrupt Nexari cloaking technology for several minutes, long enough for us to see them coming. The first test was both thrilling and terrifying. When Dr. Na activated the EMP device, the air around them seemed to shimmer. And suddenly, a Nexari drone that had been hovering invisibly near the subway entrance became visible. The alien machine looked like a metallic jellyfish, its surface rippling with strange patterns of light. For a moment, it seemed confused, floating in circles before its cloaking system reactivated, and it disappeared again. We did it, Jin breathed, hardly believing what he had seen. It can actually fight back. Meanwhile, Wu had been working on something even more dangerous, hacking into the Nexari communication networks. Night after night, he sat in the deepest part of the subway system, surrounded by screens and cables, trying to break through alien encryption. His eyes were bloodshot from staring at code for hours, and his fingers were stained with coffee and electronic components. I'm getting something, he announced one night, his voice shaking with excitement and horror. Jin, you need to see this. The information Wu had uncovered was worse than their worst nightmares. The Nexari weren't just invading Earth. They were part of a massive galactic operation that had been running for centuries. Planet after planet had fallen to their technology, and entire civilizations had been enslaved. The aliens had a system. They would arrive, demonstrate their superior technology, and wait for the local population to surrender. It had worked every time. Look at this, Wu said, pointing to streams of data flowing across his screen. It conquered over 200 worlds this way. The pattern is always the same. They show up, the locals see they can't win, and they give up. But Earth, he paused, scrolling through more information. Earth is different. We're not surrendering. Jin felt a chill run down his spine as he read the reports. The Nexari command structure was genuinely confused by human behavior. Other species had been logical when faced with superior technology. They had made the rational choice to surrender and accept slavery. But humans were doing something the aliens had never encountered before. They were fighting back even when the odds were impossible. They don't understand us, Jin realized. They think we're broken or crazy because we won't give up. Dr. Na, who had been listening from her workstation, looked up with a grim smile. Maybe that's exactly what we need to be. Crazy enough to fight when we should surrender. Stupid enough to think we can win. The opportunity for their first real strike came sooner than expected. Wu's hacking had revealed the patrol routes of Nexari scouts, and Jin saw a chance to set up an ambush. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would use Dr. Naz's EMP devices to disable the aliens' cloaking, then attack with conventional weapons before the technology could reset. On a cold morning, Jin and his team waited in the shadows of an overpass near the city center. The Nexari patrol consisted of 3 floating drones and 2 tall, thin aliens in powered armor. They moved with the confidence of a species that had never faced real resistance. Now, Jin whispered into his radio. Dr. Na activated the EMP devices, and suddenly, The invisible became visible. The Nexari patrol froze for a moment, clearly shocked that their advanced technology had failed. In that moment of confusion, Jin's team struck. They used everything they had: hunting rifles, homemade explosives, even rocks and bottles filled with gasoline. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the drones had been destroyed, and one of the aliens lay motionless on the ground. The survivors retreated, but they no longer moved with the same confidence. For the first time since, the invasion began. The Nexari had been truly surprised. The effect of this small victory rippled through both human and alien forces. Word spread quickly through the underground networks that the invaders could be hurt, that their technology could be defeated. More importantly, Wu's monitoring of Nexari communications revealed something fascinating. The aliens were genuinely disturbed by what had happened. "They're calling emergency meetings," Wu reported, his excitement barely contained. "They're questioning their entire strategy. No species has ever done this before, turned their own technology against them and fought back after seeing their power." Jin looked around at his small team in their underground hideout. They were tired, scared, and completely outmatched. But they had something the Nexari had never encountered in their centuries of conquest: the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. As the sound of alien aircraft echoed through the tunnels above them, Jin began planning their next move. Underground war had begun, and humanity was going to fight it their way. The rain hammered against the broken windows of their underground hideout as Tay checked his equipment one final time. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what they were about to attempt. The Nexar command ship hung in the sky like a dark star, its hull gleaming with an otherworldly light that made the storm clouds around it seem even more ominous. "You don't have to do this," Rhys said quietly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. She had been arguing with Tay for the past hour, knowing that his plan was essentially a suicide mission. "We can find another way." Tay smiled, the same gentle smile that had kept their team together through the darkest moments of the war. "There is no other way, and we both know it. That command ship is our only chance to end this before they bring in reinforcements from other worlds." He placed a hand on her shoulder, feeling the tension in her muscles. "Besides, someone needs to get you and the others inside. I'm the best pilot we have." The plan was desperate and dangerous, exactly the kind of strategy that had been working against the Nexari. While other conquered species had tried to fight the aliens using conventional military tactics, humans had learned to embrace chaos and unpredictability. Tay would pilot a captured Nexari fighter directly into the command ship's docking bay. Using the confusion of a fake distress signal to get close enough, the ship would be loaded with explosives, and while the aliens dealt with the explosion, Rhee's team would slip inside through the breached men. Barely 18, and the newest member of their resistance cell was loading ammunition into his weapon with shaking hands. "What if this doesn't work?" he asked, his voice cracking with emotion. "What if we're just throwing our lives away?" Hai, who had lost her entire family in the first wave of the invasion, looked up from her equipment. "And we die fighting instead of living as slaves," she said simply. "My little sister was only 6 when they took her. If there's even a chance we can save the others, we have to take it." The stolen Nexari fighter was a work of art and terror combined. Its surface rippled with the same liquid metal technology that made the alien ships so difficult to track. And its weapon systems were powered by energy sources that Dr. Na still didn't fully understand. Tay had spent weeks learning to fly it, practicing in the abandoned subway tunnels until he could navigate the alien controls by instinct alone. "Remember," he said as the team prepared to board their transport, "once I breach the hull, you'll have maybe 10 minutes before their security systems adapt to the damage. Get to the central core, plant the virus Wu designed, and get out. Don't wait for me." Rhee grabbed his arm as he turned to leave. "Tay, I know," he said softly. 2. Now, go save the world." The next few minutes passed in a blur of action and terror. Tay's fighter streaked through the storm toward the massive command ship, its engines screaming as anti-aircraft fire erupted around it. The Nexari defenders were caught off guard by the ship's identification codes, hesitating just long enough for Tay to reach the docking bay. From their hidden position, Rhea and her team watched as a brilliant flash of light erupted from the command ship's hull. The explosion was visible even through the storm clouds. For a moment, the entire alien vessel seemed to shudder in the sky. Then, exactly as planned, a section of the hull peeled away, creating a breach large enough for their infiltration. "Team to enter, go, go, go," Rhea shouted, and their stolen transport shot forward through the rain. Inside the command ship, the corridors were filled with an eerie blue light that seemed to pulse with the ship's heartbeat. The walls were covered in strange symbols that shifted and changed as they watched, and the air itself felt heavy with alien technology. Rhea led the team through the maze of passages, following the layout that Wu had somehow extracted from captured Nexari data files. "This place feels alive," Min whispered, his voice echoing strangely in the metallic corridors. "Like we're walking through the inside of some giant creature." They were moving deeper into the ship when they stumbled upon something that made them all freeze in horror. Behind a wall of transparent material, they could see dozens of humans floating in some kind of fluid, their bodies connected to the ship by cables and tubes. The people were alive but unconscious, their faces peaceful, despite the nightmare they were trapped in. "What are they doing to them?" Hai breathed, her weapon trembling in her hands. Rhea approached one of the transparent chambers and saw a woman about her own age. Her head covered in strange metallic devices, data streams flowed across screens nearby, showing brain activity patterns and neural mapping that was far beyond anything human science had achieved. "They're not just enslaving people," she realized with growing horror. "They're using their brains as computers." The team pressed deeper into the ship, following the corridors toward what their intelligence suggested was the central command core. Along the way, they discovered more chambers filled with humans from different parts of the world, all connected to the ship's systems. Children, adults, elderly people, the Nexari had been collecting them like specimens. When they finally reached the central core, what they found there changed everything they thought they knew about the invasion. The room was vast, filled with towering data processors and holographic displays showing information about Earth and dozens of other worlds. But it wasn't the technology that shocked them, it was the data itself. "Look at this," Rhea said. "Her," voice filled with disbelief as she studied the alien displays. "They've been watching us for generations, not just since the invasion, for centuries." The information was staggering. The Nexari had been secretly observing human civilization for hundreds of years, studying how their minds worked, how they created art and music and literature. They had been fascinated by human creativity and problem-solving abilities, qualities that were apparently rare in the galaxy. "They're not conquerors," Hai realized, her voice hollow with shock. "They're farmers. They've been cultivating human intelligence like we cultivate crops." Min was staring at a holographic display showing brain scans from thousands of humans. "They want to turn us into living computers for their AI systems. They think our creativity and adaptability will make their technology more powerful." But as Rhea studied the data more carefully, she began to understand something that the Nexari themselves hadn't realized. Their centuries of observation had worked both ways. While they had been learning about humanity, humans had been unconsciously learning about them, the patterns of thinking, the technological approaches, the strategic methods. It had all been absorbed into human culture through the very act of being watched. "They made a mistake," Rhea said, her voice growing stronger. "With realization, they spent so long studying us that they taught us how to think like them. That's why we've been able to adapt their technology, why we've been able to fight back when no other species could." The irony was devastating. The Nexari had been so confident in their superiority that they had never considered the possibility that their subjects might learn from them. It created the very weapon that was now being used against them, human minds that could think both creatively and logically. Combining the best of both species, as alarms began to sound throughout the ship, signaling that their presence had been detected, Rhea's team quickly planted Wu's virus in the central core. The program would spread through the Nexari network, using their own communication systems against them, just as humanity had learned to use their technology against them. "Tay did it," Rhea said quietly, as they fought their way back through the ship's corridors. "He gave us the chance we needed." The escape was a nightmare of running battles and desperate improvisation. But they made it back to their transport just as Nexari security forces began to converge on their position. As they flew away from the command ship, they could see the virus beginning to take effect, lights flickering throughout the alien vessel. Systems failing one by one. Back in their underground hideout, as they mourned Tay's sacrifice and celebrated their success, we couldn't shake the feeling that they had learned something far more important than just how to plant a virus. They had discovered that the war wasn't just about technology or superior firepower. It was about the fundamental difference between a species that conquered and a species that adapted. The Nexari had spent centuries perfecting the art of domination, but humanity had spent those same centuries learning the art of survival. And in the end, that might be the only advantage they needed. The massive Nexari mothership hung motionless in Earth's orbit, its once terrifying presence now seeming almost peaceful against the backdrop of stars. Inside the ship's central chamber, Dr. Na stood face to face with Commander Zix, the highest-ranking Nexari officer still alive. The alien's tall, graceful form was no longer encased in the intimidating armor that had once struck fear into human hearts. Instead, Zix wore simple robes, and for the first time since the invasion began, there was something almost vulnerable about the creature's appearance. "Your species has done something that we believed was impossible," Zix said, its voice carrying a strange mixture of respect and confusion. "In all our centuries of conquest, no civilization has ever turned our own methods against us so completely. You have not just defeated us, you have taught us that our entire understanding of strength was wrong." Dr. Na adjusted her glasses, still feeling strange to be having a conversation with someone who had been her enemy just months ago. "The question now is what happens next. We could destroy what remains of your empire, scatter your people across the galaxy, make you pay for all the suffering you've caused. But that would make us no better than you were." The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Around them, holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy, dozens of worlds that had been under Nexari control for generations. Their populations enslaved, their cultures nearly forgotten. The scale of the Empire's crimes was staggering, but so was the opportunity for something better. "We're offering you a choice," Dr. Na continued, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "You can face the same fate you imposed on others, or you can join us in building something new. Help us free the worlds you enslaved. Use your knowledge and technology to protect instead of conquer. Become guardians instead of oppressors." Zix's large, dark eyes studied Dr. Na's face, searching for any sign of deception. "Why would you trust us? We have caused immeasurable harm to your people and countless others. Logic suggests that we cannot be trusted." "Logic also suggested that we couldn't defeat you," Dr. Na replied with a slight smile. "But here we are. Sometimes the most logical thing to do is to believe in the possibility of change." Meanwhile, in the orbital shipyard that had once been a Nexari military facility, Jin walked through the construction bays where humanity's first interstellar fleet was taking shape. The ships were unlike anything that had ever been built, a fusion of human ingenuity and Nexari technology that created something entirely new. Earth's engineers had taken the aliens' advanced systems and combined them with human creativity, resulting in vessels that were both powerful and beautiful. Admiral called out Chief Engineer Roberts, jogging to catch up with Jin. "The first squadron is ready for launch. We've integrated the Nexari jump drives with our own navigation systems. We can reach any world in the galaxy within days instead of centuries." Jin nodded, still feeling strange about his new title. Less than a year ago, he had been a simple resistance fighter hiding in subway tunnels. Now he was Admiral of Earth's first interstellar fleet, responsible for liberating enslaved worlds across the galaxy. "Any word from the advanced teams?" "Enhai's expedition reached the Vega system yesterday," Roberts reported. "They've made contact with survivors on 3 different worlds. The populations are scared but hopeful. They're calling us the Star Liberators in their local languages." The thought of Min and Hai exploring distant worlds filled Jin with both pride and worry. The 2 young fighters had volunteered for the most dangerous missions, traveling to planets where the Nexari had ruled for generations. Their job was to make contact with enslaved populations and begin the process of rebuilding their civilizations back on Earth. In a training facility that had once been a Nexari prison camp, Ree was teaching a group of former Nexari soldiers how to fight like humans. The irony wasn't lost on Hershey, was training her former enemies to protect the very people they had once oppressed. Remember, she said to the group of tall, graceful aliens, human combat tactics aren't just about strength or technology. They're about adaptability, creativity, and turning your opponent's advantages into weaknesses you've been trained to. Think in rigid patterns, but survival requires flexibility. One of the former soldiers, a young Nexori named Kix, raised a slender hand. Instructor Ree, how do we know when to break the rules? Our entire culture was built on following precise protocols. Ree smiled, remembering her own journey from following orders to thinking independently. You'll know because your instincts will tell you. The same instincts that helped you survive our rebellion can help you protect others. Trust yourself, not just your training. As the months passed, the transformation of the galaxy began to accelerate. The new coalition of free worlds grew as more planets were liberated from Nexari control. Former slave worlds became partners in the growing alliance, each contributing their unique knowledge and perspectives to the collective effort. Dr. Na established research stations where humans and reformed Nexari worked together to develop new technologies not for conquest, but for exploration and protection. The combination of human creativity and Nexari precision led to breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. Min and Min. Hai's adventures took them to the far reaches of the galaxy, where they encountered civilizations that had been enslaved so long they had forgotten what freedom looked like. On a world called Theta Prime, they found a species of crystalline beings who had been forced to mine their own bodies for the Nexari. The rescue mission became a delicate operation to help an entire species remember how to live without fear. Children don't even know what their own language sounds like, Hai reported during one of their regular communications with Earth.
How?
The Nexari suppressed their culture so thoroughly that they've forgotten how to sing, how to tell stories, how to dream of the future. But humanity's greatest strength, their ability to adapt and overcome, proved to be contagious. As the liberated worlds began to rebuild, they didn't just restore their old ways of life. They created new ones, combining their ancient wisdom. With the lessons learned from both oppression and liberation, the moment that would define the new galactic order came when the Asus coalition faced its first major test. A group of Nexari hardliners, led by a commander who refused to accept the new reality, attempted to reclaim several liberated worlds. Instead of humanity fighting alone, the response came from across the galaxy. Former Nexari soldiers fought. Alongside human marines, liberated worlds sent their own fleets to help. The crystalline beings of Theta Prime used their unique abilities to disable enemy ships without destroying them. What had begun as a human rebellion had become a galactic movement. Jin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the diverse fleet arrayed before him. Ships of dozens of different designs, crewed by species from across the galaxy, all united by a common purpose. Open a channel to all frequencies, he ordered. Let's make sure everyone hears this. The message that went out across the galaxy was simple but powerful. This is humanity speaking for the coalition of free worlds. We were underestimated once. We'll not let that happen to others. Any world that seeks freedom will find allies. Any oppressor will find resistance. This galaxy belongs to all who call it home, not to those who would rule it. As the transmission ended, Jin looked out at the stars and thought about how far they had all come. The subway tunnels where their rebellion had begun seemed like a lifetime ago. Now, those same tunnels were part of a memorial to the sacrifice that had made freedom possible, not just for humanity, but for countless worlds across the galaxy. The Nexari Empire was gone, but something far better had taken its place, a coalition built not on conquest but on cooperation, not on fear but on hope. And at its heart was a simple truth that humanity had always known, but had finally taught the galaxy: the strongest bonds are not forged by force. but by the choice to stand together against the darkness. The Age of Guardians had begun.